Okay. Howdy there, pipe pals. I think that's the camera right there. Okay. Oh, holy smoking pipe padre coming back at you. Good evening. It is Easter Wednesday in the octave of Easter. Christ is risen. Truly He's risen. Hallelujah. Smoking one of my cherry woods. Delicious. Yes. And I'm not drinking caffeinated coffee. I'm staying away from the caffeine for a while longer. I gave it up for Lent. I'm drinking a little bit of just decaf. I still get that great flavor, and yet I don't get the caffeine. Yeah, just before Lent started, I was kind of up in my little prayer loft in the church, and and I just started, reflecting upon a lot of things in my life, and one of the things that just kind of became very clear. Speaking of clear, how's that working there? I guess that's working okay. Yeah, so I'm also smoking that beautiful, probably 12-year-old, 14-year-old maybe, Hell of the Wine that I opened up about a couple months ago. Still very tasty and flavorful. So, but as I was kind of doing a little bit of praying, it just kind of dawned on me that, see how that's working. I'm stimulated enough. I don't need a lot of extra stimulation. Try to turn the modulation down just a tad there. Doing a couple of, trying to do a stereo recording here. I don't know how it's working here. A couple of you, like it when I do stereo. Tried to do that, I got the old Sennheiser 416 over here, and then I got the Rode NTG3 over here. So maybe it might be mismatched. I don't know, but let's see how it works. Okay, great. Okay, so I'm on here tonight to wish you all happy Easter season. We liturgical Catholics, Christians, we celebrate seasons, not just days. So we don't celebrate a Christmas day. I mean, we celebrate Christmas Day, but we celebrate Christmas season, and Easter is no exception. And so we celebrate the great feast of the resurrection, our Lord's resurrection. So there you go. All right, that's great. Delicious. Okay. Also, today is the feast of St. George, so all of you Georges out there, go out there and slay your dragons. Yeah. God bless St. George. So I'm going to talk, I guess, 3 things tonight are kind of on the old docket for discussion. It seems like I haven't made a video in an awful long time, but I think my last video was April 11th, and today's the 23rd? I guess today's 23rd. So we're going to talk about, obviously, the passing of Pope Francis. We'll talk about him probably at the end of the video. But I wanted to talk about 2 other things that I think one's kind of a frivolous thing, but it's kind of fun. And the other one's a little more serious, and it kind of will lead us into, excuse me, got a little tobacco piece there. It'll lead us into talking about Pope Francis and his pontificate and possible popibile potential front runners that are apparently maybe vying for the office of Pope. So anyway, I wanted to talk about the ladies that went up in the rocket. I'll just put it that way. The rocket. Mm-hmm. And the Jeff Bezos. I'm trying to keep it a family show, a G rating still. My goodness. Might get a little PG here in just in some of the comments I'm going to say. But if you know why I'm kind of giggling, I'll just put a picture up. Maybe that'll make sense. Okay, great. But so the ladies went up in this rocket and they came down. Whatever goes up must come down. There were a few people who commented online in different places. Couldn't they just have kept going? Just bye. And I think the brouhaha started when they tried, I guess I was going to say Katy Perry was trying to wax all so philosophic and poetic and like she's had this like the greatest insight since man or womankind, and how it was all like an experience of this deep transcendence and expression and uniting with the eternal love in the universe, whatever. And if they had just went up and went down and just said, hey, we had fun and it was great, and left it at that, nobody would have been, kind of lampooning them, because then they had the audacity to say that they were astronauts. Yeah. No, ladies, you went for a ride. That's about it, okay? It takes a little bit more training and a little bit more dedication and a whole lot more smarts to be a real astronaut. Now, one person goes, well, astronaut just means star voyager. Well, they didn't even go to the stars, okay? They went up in a rocket ship and they came back down. I think somebody said the ride at Disneyland is a lot longer than they spend in, zero G. I guess that's really what they accomplish, is going into zero G. So a lot of people have just been enjoying. It's almost a little bit like kind of like the Dylan Mulvaney thing. We just had a lot of fun with watching these people, taking themselves way too seriously. And most of us love to line up and give them, and a slice of reality pie, And of course, the outrage, that's when it really took off, no pun intended, is when, we started saying, no, ladies, you just went for a ride. You're not real astronauts, okay? And everybody got up, the people that, were supporting the ladies. Now, some people called them the bimbos in space, Bezos's bimbos, So, they went up, they went down. Okay. Now, you could say, well, all astronauts go up and go down. I know. But we have to be honest and realize when you look back at the actual, and I lived through a lot of this, if not all of it, the space race, the manned space flight and all that great stuff, starting with Alan Shepard, actually started with Yuri Gagarin, and even before that, Sputnik. And I mean, okay, it's all there. To be an astronaut was something that most people were never going to get a chance at being, and when the guys that did qualify and they made it, their lives probably became a living hell, because all of the testing and all of the training and the hours, and it just, and then of course the risk, Apollo 9? No, Apollo. It wasn't Apollo 1, was it? I don't know. Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. They were the first astronauts to die, not in space, but in the pursuit of space. But they died there, and so they were sacrificed. And there was a couple other astronauts that they didn't die technically in training, but they died in the program. So anyway. But anyway, but it's just a lot of fun to make fun of people that take themselves, way too seriously, accrue to themselves the titles that they really didn't earn and they really aren't. Okay, so ladies, you have yourself a wonderful day unless you've made other plans. That's just the ups and downs of it. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about in a little bit of detail here. Now, again, I'm not a citizen of the UK, but apparently last week the Supreme Court announced, Lord Hodge, one of the presiding judges there, made the announcement that, and I know some people, if you haven't heard this already, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but if you're in the kind of the mafia, alphabet mafia with the T part, you're going to be pretty upset and pretty angry. Yeah, I'm sure you've already heard of it, but basically they said, now this might come as a shocker. Hope you're sitting down. That only biological women are true and real women, according to biology. Okay. Well, that's just the way it goes, and that's reality. And it's a great win for common sense. It's a great win for women. It's a great win for reality. It's a great win for science, and it's a great win for biology. Again, I've been thinking all along, how did this whole craziness get started? I mean, about 12, 15 years ago, we had all these, it started and it was like, this is crazy. It defies, it's absurdity. It's absurdity to the 10th power, And I thought, nobody's going to really be supporting this because it's on the face of it, it's just facetious. It's absurd, And everybody knows what a real man is and what a real woman is, But unfortunately, I think we live in a societal psychosis. I think that there's a book out, I know, about that whole topic. I haven't read it. I should read it. But basically, yeah, it's societal psychosis. And it all started with the internet and young people especially, trying to tell young boys and young girls especially that, oh, you're trapped in the wrong body, And all of the trans surgeries, I honestly believe with every fiber of my being that in 30 years, maybe less, they'll look back on the trans surgeries, quote unquote, just like we look back now on the lobotomies of the 1950s and 60s. It's just absolutely bizarre. People cutting off healthy organs. Now, the problem is, I think, and again, I might have said this in other videos, that unfortunately, because of the internet, because of social media, young people are striving to find their true selves, supposedly. They're trying to find, in other words, these are people that are vulnerable because they're going through puberty. I think puberty is kind of like I guess it is an altered state. If you think about it, the hormones are now ramping up, where before you were a child, before, infant, toddler, child, but still, underneath that umbrella or the threshold of puberty. But once puberty starts, and everybody wants to be wanted and desired and accepted. I understand all that. We all do. And some kids are going to be nice looking and athletic and popular, and the majority are going to be kind of in the middle. And there's going to be, unfortunately, some kind of like me who are kind of homely and kind of nobody really wanted to. They might have wanted to be your friend, but you weren't popular. You were never going to be. I was never going to be a popular kid. And then I had the kids that were, again, and this is where I think drug addiction comes in, and I think that has a lot to do with it too. But people were feeling left out, and so they maybe found a group, a clique of people that were kind of like, coalescing around drugs. And they were, because most of the kids that I hung out with were just kind of like me, a kind of nerd, kind of, I was kind of like a class clown. And then they kind of got to a point where they go, well, yeah, everybody thinks I'm funny and ha ha ha, and I'm like the court jester in the classroom type thing, and that's how I get recognized and kind of accepted. But I don't want that anymore. I want to do something cool, And I remember the first time one of my friends was, he was kind of like me. He was interested in bicycles and building models and things like that. And then one day he was like, "Oh, that's just for babies. That's just for uncool kids. You want to do some drugs? I got some dope here, man. Let's try. You got to try this. It's going to make you feel great." And I just watched too many Dragnet. I got to be honest with you, Jack Webb. Just the facts, man. Just the facts, And I love Dragnet. I love those police cop shows. And God bless them. God bless them. I listened to the message, and it was like, drugs make you sick. And one of the things that I would see in a lot of the Dragnet shows, and they showed these young kids they were doing drugs, and then usually at the end, the kid would come to their senses and say, "Yeah, that was stupid. I don't want to do that again." But they talked a lot about these kids getting sick and barfing and throwing up. That's the thing I hated worse as a kid growing up. Some kids hate certain things, and to me, being sick to my stomach and losing my lunch, I hated that more than anything. I mean, if I could hold everything down and I didn't have to, do the Ralph kind of thing, I would just rather be sick than have to lose my lunch. And so seeing kids, that were doing the drugs, at least the message that I got on one of these Dragnet shows, they were doing the drugs and trying to be slick, hip, and cool. And, then they get sick and, unfortunately, and then they come, Officer Friday, I'll never do drugs again, and I kind of got, well, I don't want to be sick to my stomach. That doesn't sound like fun to me. So anyway, I just never did the drug thing. So, but again, every kid going through puberty, it's that place, I think, where you kind of have to, you got to come to terms with who you are as a person, who you are as in your societal group, who you want to be, where you want to go, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's, puberty is an awkward phase of life, but it's a part of life. And again, if you could, but now with the kids are being told this lie that, well, maybe the reason why you don't feel good in your body is because you're in the wrong body. No, sorry. So anyway, and so a lot of the kids have bought into this societal psychosis, and they think, oh gosh, if I'm a young girl and maybe I should be a young boy, thank you, Ellen Page. What a tragedy that is, And I think eventually, again, nature wins out in the end. You can only fool Mother Nature so long. I saw this one interesting thing, which is even more telling than anything else that I've seen lately, is that the guys who are claiming to be trans opposite sex, one of the critiques that some people are kind of leveling at them, and legitimately so, is they're saying, well, you're saying you're a trans, woman, but you're not even making any attempt to even try to look like a woman now. And this one guy goes, I don't care. I don't have to look like a woman 24/7. I only look like a woman when I want to. I'm going to let my beard grow. I'm going to let all this stuff go, and I'm not going to wear makeup, and all this stuff. And I'm not going to. It's like, well, if you're not a woman, then what are you? It's like these people are playing a game. I think in so many ways it's like the kid in the classroom that just wants to see how far he can go, and see how far they're going to put up with the nonsense. And finally, an adult will say, "That's enough. Knock it off." And kind of what the UK did last week was kind of do just that. Knock it off. Now, the problem is they're still on that slippery slope. I'm going to be honest. I know some of you are probably going to be upset when I say this, but I'm kind of getting to a point where I'm seeing that this whole alphabet mafia thing, this whole ideology, it has caused so much confusion, and it's not good. It's just not good. To encourage people to engage in their psychosexual arrested states, I think in the long run it does more harm than good. People, I know some people don't want to hear about conversion therapy or whatever, but it's the same thing with alcohol and drugs. We need to have 12-step programs to help people through this, to help them say, you know what, this really doesn't. it's not a good thing in the end, really. And so I just think that it's a victory for women there in the UK. I'm happy for them. Now there's a kind of a sense that even though I celebrate the fact that it's a kind of a vote for common sense and a vote for, kind of like reality, calling it what it is, the people in the movement, these ladies in Scotland, I think they were the ones that brought the case, and that's what got heard, and that's what got decided upon. But there's also a dark side to this, in that some of these women are real misandrists. I guess that's a word. Misandry, instead of misogyny, misandry is the hatred of all men. And I think some of these ladies really do fall into that camp. That's, I'm not saying like people like J.K. Rowling or people like that, but there are some in the movement who, it isn't that they just want to protect women's spaces, and everybody can, I think most people would agree with that. But there are some that really, there's maybe a small percentage that they hate men, period. Now, I hate men, well, I shouldn't say I hate men, but I detest men that want to pretend that they're women, because they never will be, they never were, never will be. But again, you look at some of these people, and the only thing that they've got is this, now I'm a trans person, look at me. It's all about look at me. And I think that has an awful lot to do with it. Some of these people belong in freak shows. Sorry, But anyway, I just feel really bad. I feel sad for some of them, because some of them are really, there was one person on the YouTube about a year ago, and I really questioned their mental capabilities of even, but they went through the surgery, and instead of being repulsed by that, which I think was my first reaction, but listening to this person talk, they seemed like they were, again, probably a word you're not supposed to use anymore, retarded. They seemed like they were not truly, even though they had an adult body, they were mentally, maybe years beyond or below what they should be in their biological, chronological age, whatever. They seemed like they were more of barely an adolescent, and they seemed like they really had a lot of other problems. And I thought, wow, they allowed this person to do this, and it was just heartbreaking, because it really was heartbreaking. I'm looking at this poor individual, I'm thinking, oh man, But a lot of people, they kind of do it because it's fashionable. It's like smoking was back in the 50s and 60s, 70s. Young people were going to be slick, hip, and cool by smoking. I'm going to light up a fag, and I'm going to be cool, like James Dean, or, Dean Martin, or, whoever, the Robert Goulet, and Cary Grant, and Clark Gable, right? All these people, all these movie stars of the old age, they're all smokers. Most of them, maybe not all of them, but most of them, but smoking was considered like, yeah, that's cool. And I think that that's the way it is with the trans surgeries and the trans ideology. It's cool. Now, part of it has to do with good old-fashioned American, we want to root for the underdog, and don't you dare tell me what I can and can't do with my body. That's such a big, big part of it, So anyway, I think that I think it's a win for the UK. It's a great thing that, unfortunately it's silly that we have to actually legislate reality. It's like, there's a day and night, there's, anyway, I hope that now again, there's the transvestites are all up in arms, and, they're angry and they're upset. The scary thing is that, again, and I think it goes back to what I was saying just a minute ago, that some of these people mentally don't have, I don't think they're very put together very well, because they're now talking about like burning and hanging J.K. Rowling and other women like this who were supporting this whole movement. And they're violent. I mean, let's be honest. Some of these people recently that have been school shooters were transvestites or trans people. That's sad to say, but they were. And it's scary. So we have people who are mentally unstable, and instead of them being like young kids going through puberty, adolescence, these are grown adults and grown adult bodies, and even though their mental capacity might be a little off, and they think that maybe I need to go out and kill people because they're the bad people, don't you know? So. But I think that we need to be honest, we need to open up mental institutions again and help people with these altered states of reality, these beliefs, these crazy beliefs, to help them. See, I'm looking at that. Okay, I see what that is. I'm looking at, sometimes it looks like augmented reality, like there's a little piece of something digital in my actual physical world, but it's not. But it's getting to be weird that augmented reality is probably closer than we think. I mean, it's already here in some places. So, where am I at here? I still got some time here. Let me relight my pipe here and kind of collect my thoughts for the last part of the video. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this last subject. Okay. So let me get a little bit of coffee here. Okay, that's good. I like that. That's good. That's really good. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 test. Okay, good. Okay. So Easter Monday morning, 2 days ago, woke up to the surprising news, kind of shocking to some extent. I mean, it caught me off guard that Pope Francis has reposed in the Lord. He's gone to his eternal homeland. Okay? And it probably won't come as a big shock to a lot of you that I had a lot of disagreements with his papacy. Now, the man himself, I struggled because I was not happy that the man died. Okay, I'm not happy. That doesn't make me rejoice and go, yay, because some of you mostly know that I'm a Roman Catholic. I'm an Orthodox Catholic, but I reject again all the woke stuff, and a lot of that woke stuff under his tenure seeped its way into a lot of churches. A lot of churches celebrate Pride Month, which is an abomination. We just need to celebrate the Sacred Heart of Jesus in June, not perverted lifestyles. Sorry. Again, all you have to do is read the scriptures. Even James Martin, who is a big advocate of the rainbow people, will admit, yes, the scriptures clearly condemn LGBT lifestyles. Okay, even he admits that, but he thinks that they're wrong and they need to be changed. Well, how are you going to change 2,000 years of church teaching? How are you going to change 2,000 years of what thus saith the Lord? Well, you can't. And I have to say that I think in some ways that's what Papa Francesco kind of figured out, that. And to his credit, he was at least honest enough to say, well, I don't want a new church, I want a different church. Ooh. And he even said, hey, go out there and make a mess. And I have to say, he succeeded at making a mess. There was a couple of comments that I remember hearing in the last few days. One person, I don't know if it was BBC or I think it was a BBC interview. And this lady's, she's starting to wax poetical and, super positive about, his papacy, and it was a breath of fresh air, And someone commented, more like a foul flatulence, These comments, I tell you. It said he spoke he spoke the language of the people, Now I came up with this one. I said, I think he spoke with clear ambiguity. And I'll claim that one. He spoke with clear ambiguity. He was steeped in equivocation. He would say one thing and then he'd say something completely opposite that, and it was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And again, I'll say this: I think that in many ways he was a lot like former President Joe Biden, where he probably had some cognitive issues, especially in his later years. I think a lot of the things that were attributed to him probably really weren't. He had a kind of a cabal of these guys, these renegade guys that really want to destroy the church, dismantle it from within, and they're still going to try and do it. We don't know what the conclave is going to bring. We'll talk about that maybe in a little bit. But they're not happy, and they just believe that the church needs to uncouple itself from tradition and doctrines and dogmas and church teachings and commandments and just do something different, right? Got to repackage it, got to rebrand ourselves, And, it's funny, I heard somebody say, well, a lot of people want religion in their life now, they're returning to religion. Well, they want religion in their life only to a certain extent. They don't want that religion to have any authority to tell them, to direct, to make demands on them. They want religion. They want the name, but they don't want the investment. They don't want to do the discipleship. They want kind of just a name only. Give me my little religion badge and I'm good to go. And again, they don't want a God that's really going to make demands on them. It's going to challenge them. It's going to there's going to be some unconditional things there. There's going to be conditions, actually. There's conditions. I think a lot of people really liked the Pope Francis person because, he's kind of like an old doddering old grandpa, and, you don't have to pay any attention to grandpas or old, daft uncles, because they're the way everybody knows they're kind of, that's just the way they are, and you don't take them seriously. It's like, oh, well, you can have an affection for them, but when that let's say that grandpa or that uncle or whatever is more like a father, and as a prison chaplain, we used to have a lot of people from different religious groups, and I had to oversee them because they weren't actually salaried chaplains. They were just volunteers, and they'd come in and they'd wax off. Oh, I really ministered to the guys today. They were really responding and everything. And I said, you know what? There's a difference between you and me. And they said, what's that? I said, you come in here and you're like a grandpa. You can say all these nice things and they'll tell you that they love you and they like you. But I'm here 5, 6, 7 days a week. I have to sometimes tell these people no. I have to make decisions that they're not going to like. I'm kind of like the father here. Literally, I'm the father here. And I have to be the father. And sometimes they don't like the dad because the dad has to say no. Grandpas can spoil kids and get away with it and leave at the end of the day or send them back to their, but no, the dad has to be the dad. And sometimes it's not easy being the dad, the parent, the adult in the room, because sometimes you had to say hard things and people don't like to hear those hard things. So Pope Francis was kind of like the grandpa that everybody they thought that they knew and they loved, but had he started making, saying, hey, by the way, this is wrong, this is sinful, apparently we saw him actually kind of, I guess, literally waffle. In the beginning, he was dead set against this gender theory. This whole idea of men can become women and women can become men. He would call it diabolical in the beginning. And then towards the end, he was having lunch with trannies, and celebrating them and telling them how wonderful they were. And, oh, your makeup looks really good there. That's how I like that, Anyway, yeah, he's passed on. And again, God have mercy on his soul. We've been praying for him. I personally say rosary for him every day, and we'll have a mass for him on Saturday. But there's some Catholics, I think, they feel kind of the way probably Russian people felt the day they learned that Joseph Stalin died. There was a sense of relief. It's like, whew, glad. I'm not glad he's dead, or I'm sad he died, and I don't wish anybody ill will, and especially him. But I think there was a relief that he's no longer the grand jefe. He's just he's passed on, and now we hope that we won't get another progressive guy, because I'm afraid that guy will literally run the church off the rails. He'll break everything, because it's like driving around. I was thinking of this in my truck. I was thinking about this when I was driving I had to go drop something off in the mail today. And I said, the church, because a lot of people are saying, well, did he really change the church, and everything? And I kind of think it's like, I used to have this car in college. It was all beat up. I put some dings on it. I had people hit me in like gas stations and parking lots and stuff. So that car was covered with dents. It still ran. I wouldn't say ran perfectly, but it still got me to point A to point B. We used to call it the Barf Mobile because it was the ugliest car in the parking lot. And in some ways, I kind of think that after what the Pope has done in the last 12 years, he's been like a bull in a china shop. He's just trashed it. It's like a teenage kid, that just trashes the family car. Yeah, it still runs, but man, it is beat up, right? And that's the way I kind of feel. It's that he kind of was a bit reckless in a lot of the things that he was trying to do. I know, some people think, oh, well, he was trying to reach out to all these marginalized people. Well, you don't encourage people in their sin, basically. If you love somebody, you're going to tell them the truth. Just like alcoholics, drug addicts. If you really love somebody and they're struggling, and I think most people in the alphabet community, they struggle. They're going to always struggle with this, knowing that deep down inside there's something not right. You can maybe, smooth that over and it doesn't bother you after a while, kind of deaden your conscience to certain things. But by and large, people know that it's not right. It just, literally. And I think that when we deal with when we deal with a kind of a divided heart and mind and soul, it causes a lot of psychological. It exacerbates, the psychological problems that you're already experiencing. It's sort of like saying, well, my finger itches, and so in order to fix that, I'm just going to cut off my hand. Yeah, you can do that. It's pretty extreme. Will the itching stop? Yeah, you betcha. But you're going to not have a hand anymore. You're doing something that really doesn't address the problem. It just makes it worse. Especially, it gets compounded over the years and decades. The best thing to do is to face these problems in your life and try to deal with them in a healthy way. But I think what we've done in our society and even in our church, we've co-signed, we've endorsed people, we've enabled people to live in these perverted lifestyles, and unfortunately, all it's done is made our society worse, made it far worse, and the church is now far worse for it too. So, now we kind of look forward to this conclave. There was I don't know if any of you have seen that movie, The Conclave. It's terrible. It could have been really a good movie. It kind of started out a little bit more like a mystery, like a detective story. But about halfway through, it's like, well, if we're going to keep this, narrative in the storyline going, it's going to go on longer and it's going to get more convoluted, and we're not going to be able to get to our message, because the whole movie was a message about it was all about this bizarre trans stuff. The first woman pope, bizarre. But that's the message they wanted to leave you with. But they had all these tropes. They had the ultra conservative, hateful guy, and they made him look like a big fat so-and-so and a glutton and a drunkard. And then they even had the lovable drunk priest, but they took a little pity on the drunk priest because they were saying, well, he's just a poor old drunk priest, And then you have the ultra liberal, but unfortunately, those guys are alive and well in that conclave, that the real conclave is going on right now, and they have an agenda. They have a real agenda. And then you have the guy who tried to be like the middle of the road, and apparently he was the Carmelinga, the guy who's the Chamberlain, the guy's overseeing the conclave. Ray Fiennes' character. And like I said, the first 30 minutes, it really kind of seemed like, wait a minute, there's more to this movie than I've been led to believe, because I was told that that's basically what it was. It was the big payoff, the big setup was they basically elected the first woman pope. It was like, oh, brother, give me a break. And that was enough for me not to even want to watch it. But I thought, well, now we're going to do this in real life. I wonder how influential a movie like this might be. And so I'm afraid that there are going to be people that love that message, and they would probably think, well, what a great idea that is, and no. But the problem was they just set up all these tropes of all these different types of people, and they didn't really make it something that you could really, real character development. It was just a bunch of cliche characters that, they just stuck in there because they needed to have the bad guy, the bad conservative, quote unquote, guy, and the all these other people. They were just, and I just thought, there like I said, in the beginning there was kind of, and also there was a lot of there were just a lot of things there that were very disrespectful. And they did it on purpose. The one thing that I thought was really unnecessary, they have this pope, and I got to say, he looked an awful lot like Pope Francis. Now, this movie was made, about a year ago, came out. Maybe about 6 months ago. But I mean, but they made him look almost, at a certain distance, you go, guys, is that really Pope Francis? It looks like him. He was a knockoff for Pope Francis. But in the beginning of the movie, and they do that awkward cut scene, and it was just. And then the one thing that really I thought was just unnecessary is they kind of treated the popes, the deceased pope, like a piece of trash. The way they were, removing his body from the apartment and, taking it to wherever, but they treated it like it was a thing. It was just so disrespectful. And if you haven't seen it, I don't recommend it, but if you have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It was just, they didn't need to do that. The sound design, whatever, it was just like, that's unnecessary. But the way they were handling his remains were like, it was just nothing. It was just, yes, I understand it's a dead person. The soul has left the body, but still, as Catholics, and this is something that I think I'm getting even a better appreciation for, we still have respect for the mortal remains of that person. We don't treat them with disrespect or indifference or, it's like, oh, it's just a dead thing, boom. And that was very discouraging, disgusting to me. So, again, I'm not recommending that movie whatsoever, but unfortunately, it might be a little bit more to real life than I'm comfortable with. But I'm hoping now, getting back to the actual real conclave, some people have said, and I think it's an interesting point, I didn't know this, Pope Francis has appointed most of these cardinals. So you might think, well, it's going to be an automatic shoo-in for a Francis II type guy. But one thing that is interesting, and I think this will be very fascinating, is he said that these cardinals really have never come together for anything. They don't know each other. Oh. So there's some room for the Holy Spirit to really work. Now, if they were a political wall, a political body that, we're all going to go, make Pope Francis too, and that kind of thing, and the new Pope. But a lot of them, they've never literally had they're supposed to be a college of cardinals, but I don't think they've ever sat really and got to know one another. So it's going to be very awkward and challenging these next few days after the Pope is laid to rest, because there's going to be a lot of, I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of awkwardness, but yet there won't be a clique already. Oh, well, I mean, sure there'll be people that are more aligned with, say, more progressives and more traditionals and all that kind of stuff. But they don't know each other for the most part, and that might be a good thing, because there's going to be hopefully some objectivity because of that, So that's my hope and prayer, that that the conclave will not be as it was in that movie Conclave, because they just basically made it into a political power struggle. And, they weren't even thinking about the people of God. They weren't thinking about God at all. It was all politics. And, I mean, it was pretty discouraging to see that. It was, like I said, there were some scenes that I thought were really inappropriate. And it's almost like they were giving you a middle finger. If you're saying, well, you're watching this movie, and if you're a Catholic, well, here's a little middle finger to you, buddy. I mean, it was really kind of disrespectful. So anyway, but I hope that the real conclave will not be at all like that. But I know there's going to be wrangling and infighting. There always is, and things like this. But anyway, hopefully, it's been an uphill struggle for a lot of us for the last 12 years. But the good thing about uphills, there's usually a downhill on the other side. So maybe there will be a little bit of a kind of a restructuring, a little bit more clarity. Hopefully that's what will happen. Instead of more chaos and confusion, will move back to at least something of the center where there's some clarity, where yes is yes and no is no. Sorry, just like what happened in the UK, and we probably have to kind of address the elephant in the room, and that is the people that are trying to alter reality with their agenda. And that's kind of just a dangerous thing, because when you can't say what is real anymore, well, that's your truth, or that's your reality. My reality is this. Well, no, there is objective reality. It's nighttime out there. Now some people might say, well, no, it's daytime. And I just say, what? What do you mean it's daytime? Well, you just don't have the right eyes to see. It's daytime. That's kind of the whole thing with this transgender stuff. It's like they're gaslighting you. They're saying, well, no, that's don't you know that's a real woman? But it's not. Biology, science, and reality, I'm sorry, basically say, no, it's not. And somehow we are allowed to let people like that tell us that we're wrong. I guess it's 1984. How many fingers am I holding up, Winston? 4. No, it's 5. It's 5. No, it's 4. No, it's 5. Now how many fingers am I holding up, huh? It's crazy. It's happening. So let's pray that people that are struggling with these kinds of problems, they get help. And that, but the other thing is, we don't allow these extremists to basically, destroy society with their delusions. Wow. Okay. Well, it looks like I have come to the end of this video. Thank you so much for taking time to watch and spend a little time with the old Padre here. Trying to finish up my decaf coffee. So I hope you're having a great Easter season and a great spring. Spring where I live right now is breaking out. And the nice thing about spring in the mountains is it doesn't like in the valley. When I lived in the valley most of my adult life, it just would come and go in a couple of weeks. But here it starts kind of late, kind of starts where you normally think spring would start around, late March, early April. And it lingers. This will be in the springtime season until, just about beginning of July, but it won't be gone in like 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden, it just becomes beastly hot and all that stuff. So it's a beautiful time to be in the mountains, and it's a beautiful time to celebrate the great glory of Easter. Christ is risen. Truly he's risen. Alleluia. Christos anesti, alitos anesti. All right. Thanks for watching, and we will see you all on the next one. Thanks for watching.